For this episode, we're going to be finishing up 1995, and we're going to recap what happened in December. And then at the end, we'll give you some awards. But first, we'll start with the first head-to-head here. It is on December 4th of 1995. And we'll start with Nitro, as usual. And Pepe's outfit of the week, he is an angel.
Aww.
Of course he is.
And from the heavens.
I do want to mention Eric Bischoff is seen with a disgustingly 90s denim jacket on. A sight to behold. But Bischoff does mention that due to the actions that happened in the last few weeks, that Hogan, Flair, and the Giant are on probation for putting their hands on referees. But the first match we have is the American Males versus Harlem Heat. And they have Sister Sherry as their manager, and this is for the WCW Tag Team titles. During this match, Colonel Parker comes out with a present to give to Sherry, and she opens it, and it turns out is a wedding ring. And then they embrace and leave together, leaving the Harlem Heat wondering where the heck their manager just went. But Harlem Heat wins this match. Booker T hits the Harlem Hangover on Riggs for the win. We're still continuing the Sister Sherry and Colonel Parker storyline.
Yep.
We'll see what happens. There's love in the air. We'll find out.
Most of this build for Sherry and Rob Parker takes place on the Saturday show. So if you would like to see the progression of that, there are some channels that have all of the Saturday WCW shows because they're not all on the network for whatever reason.
The network stops doing WCW
like
Saturday shows in 1994. Yeah. Anyway, so after that match, we then get an interview with Sting and Lex Luger. Sting says he wanted to talk to Lex Luger without Jimmy Hart by his side because Sting thinks Jimmy Hart is a bad influence on his friend. He tells Luger that he doesn't agree with Jimmy Hart being part of Lex Luger's life. Mean Gene mentions to Sting and Luger that they had the triangle match at Starrcade, and there's a possibility of Sting facing Lex Luger for the title. Sting tells Lex that just because they're friends doesn't mean that he's going to take it easy on him. Luger responds saying the same thing applies to him. They're just pretty much saying, hey, if we face each other, let the best man win.
Because they're such good friends.
All right, so then we'll go to Raw. First, there's a video package for Shawn Michaels, and there's a doctor saying that Shawn Michaels is not progressing well neurologically. So, is Shawn going to come back? It seems like his symptoms are getting worse. But the first match is Sparkplug Holly versus the British Bulldog. And I wonder who wins since they're pushing Bulldog. Oh, Bulldog wins. He wins with the running power slam. It wasn't too much of a match.
It was just enhanced.
Just a showcase,
Bulldog, because Bulldog's about to get a title match.
After this, Raw has an interview as well. There's a Bob Backlund interview. King tells Backlund that he will be facing Bret Hart in a non-title match. And Backlund doesn't like that. He says he wants to be champion again so that he can be God again and Lord.
God again.
And Lord over the plebeians. He says we don't need any hitmans in our society. We need more role models like himself.
Vince is not happy with Backlund, so he calls to cut the mic.
After commercial break, we see footage during the commercial break of Bob Backlund going nuts that his microphone's cut off, and he goes looking for the sound engineer.
Oh, yeah.
If I was a sound engineer, I'd be looking out for him. That comes into play later.
I love this crazy Bob Backlund character.
I don't even think he's playing a character. I think he's legit insane.
He might be.
He plays it too well for it to be an act.
It's either that or he is 100% still behind Keep Kayfabe Alive.
He is of that generation. But next for WCW, we have Sting versus Kurosawa. And the announcers try to make this seem like a more interesting match than it was by saying that Sting is putting himself in harm's way by facing Kurosawa because Kurosawa has injured people's arms before, like he did with Hawk. But Sting is not afraid of Kurosawa, and he wins with the Scorpion Deathlock. And the announcers make mention that Sting is on a roll. He's picking up a lot of victories. So they're presenting him as a legitimate challenger to the title, which he is. And then let me go ahead and do this other match for WCW real quick. Is Scott Norton versus the Giant with Jimmy Hart and Taskmaster. Of course, we know the Giant's going to win, but I do want to know that Norton does get the Giant up and the atomic drop kind of thing, and he holds him there for a minute, and I thought that was pretty impressive. I know Norton is a strong individual, but the Giant is he's a big dude. But Giant wins with the choke slam. The announcers make mention that no one has kicked out of the choke slam. They're trying to build up this move as being unstoppable. So the second match for WWF was Fatu versus the Brooklyn Brawler. got 2 wins with a top rope splash. This was a squash match like most of Brooklyn Brawler's matches are. But then after the match, we see Doc Hendricks, and he says that Owen Hart's open challenge has been answered. But before he can tell us who answered it, Bob Backlund is shown to be roughing up the sound engineer. He found him, and then he puts him in a cross-faced chicken wing. And he manhandles this dude. It's like maybe some young 20-year-old man. He just manhandles this guy. But then after we go back to Doc Hendricks, and he says, Owen Hart's open challenge has been answered by Diesel, because Diesel's not going to let Owen Hart get away with doing that to his friend. And then the next match for Raw is Dean Douglas versus Razor Ramon for the Intercontinental title. And Razor Ramon is the champion coming into this match. He is seen to be wearing Shawn Michaels' name on his boots, showing that, you know, they are friends, and they were in real life too.
This match is pretty short. Douglas tries to hit Razor with the title, or having to take it away. I always love it. Razor, eventually gets him down and paintbrushes him. But
Razor wins with the Razor's Edge, and this is a pretty hard-looking Razor's Edge, if I remember right. Yeah, he did not like Dean Douglas.
You could tell Dean Douglas was about to be out the door with how quick he lost this match, because he was just recently set up as a contender for the Intercontinental title, and now he's just getting easily beaten.
Dean Douglas isn't long for the WWF. After that, we have a Brother Love segment. He brings out King Mabel, but Brother Love, he always has a funny way of saying words, so it is Brother Maybell. But he tells Mabel he has a surprise for him. Before he shows what the surprise is, he tells Mabel that he knows King Mabel is missing Sir Mo, who was defeated by The Undertaker last week. Says King Mabel should be afraid of The Undertaker. But King Mabel responds, and he says a couple things here that I don't think are factually correct. He says he was the first man to pin The Undertaker, which we know is not true.
Yeah, I think the first person to pin The Undertaker was Tito Santana.
Yeah, so I don't know where he got that from. He said he was the first to put him out of action. I can't verify that one. I don't know.
Yokozuna.
Yeah, and then he says he will be the first to put Undertaker in a casket. Again, Yokozuna did that. So he says a couple things. I don't know why they made him say that when it's easily, and it was not even that long ago where we saw Undertaker lose to Yokozuna in that casket match. But anyways, Brother Love does bring out his surprise for Mabel, and then a druid comes out pushing a casket. Brother Love says, actually, I have 2 surprises for you, Maybell, and the druid is Sir Mo. And then Sir Mo takes the blanket off the casket and shows that the casket has been graffitied in their sort of artistic style. So it's a men on a mission casket, if you will. And then Mabel says he loves it, and that was that. Right before the main event for WCW, we have an in-ring interview with Ric Flair and Charles Barkley. And Charles Barkley is wearing about the most 90s fashion you could possibly be wearing.
Yeah. Yes.
Had his shirt tucked in and everything. Really nothing to this promo that they're doing besides promoting Barkley being there, making it seem like WCW is the place to be. Yeah, there's really nothing of substance to it. But then for the main event for Nitro, it was Lex Luger with Jimmy Hart versus Macho Man for the WCW title. And Lex is starting to work more heel, obviously because it's sort of associated with the Dungeon of Doom, but not quite in there. So he's doing more of his cockiness that is always better when he does it, like more narcissistic gimmicks. But during this match, Macho Man has the injured arm, but during this match, Macho Man works Lex's arm, so now they both have an injured arm. One of the turnbuckles gets exposed, and Lex Luger goes to hit Macho Man in the corner on the exposed turnbuckle, but Macho Man reverses it, and Lex Luger eats the corner, and then Macho Man hits his elbow drop, but the ref is out. So then Jimmy Hart jumps on the apron, and Savage sees him, and he grabs Jimmy Hart, but Flair comes out and punches Savage with a foreign object.
So there was a moment in this match where Luger slams Savage head in the turnbuckle, and there's a remark that Bischoff makes. He says, our wrestlers work through pain. And I was like, I wonder if they're referencing Shawn Michaels.
Could be. Yeah, I didn't catch that. But, I mean, they always sneak in their shots.
Yeah. Since it was Bischoff that said it, that's what made me think it. Because maybe if it was Heenan, maybe not.
Off the cuff. Bischoff is definitely calculated. But after Flair comes out and hits Savage with the foreign object, Hulk Hogan comes out. He chases Flair into the ring. Lex Luger goes to pin Macho Man, and the ref starts to count to 3. But as he's going to count to 3, Hulk Hogan grabs the ref's arm to prevent him from counting to 3, and the ref DQs Macho Man because of this. After the DQ, Hogan grabs Jimmy Hart and Lex Luger, bangs their heads together. They're out of here. Sting runs out, though, to prevent Hogan for going after Luger even further. Hulk Hogan does go to punch Luger one more time, but Luger ducks it and hits Sting instead. And the two get into a pushing match before Macho Man breaks it up. And then we get Mean Gene coming into the ring to get to the bottom of this. What is going on between you three? So he tells
the bottom of something. You got to throw Mean Gene in there.
So Gene tells Hogan, hey, Hogan, you're on probation already, and you just touched another ref tonight. Hogan says he's not worried about probation. He and Sting are supposed to team up against Arn and Flair, but he wants to know what Sting's got going on with Luger. Sting says, hey, Hulk, me and Luger are best friends, and Luger's a bit mixed up right now, and I'm trying to straighten him out. I don't run out on my friends.
He's like, I'm on your side.
Yeah, I'm on your side.
Sucks up the Hogan some more.
He tells Hogan, why do you have to come down on Luger every week? He said Luger does have a short fuse, but maybe Luger didn't get the opportunity that he felt he wanted or deserved. He's not pointing fingers, he's just stating a fact. Sting tries to get back on Hogan's good graces, saying he hates Flair and Arn too, and he says, Hogan, we need to be on the same page. Wrapping this up, Hogan says he is Sting's friend, and they're going to beat Flair and Arn. But he tells Sting, you make sure you keep your pal Luger out of our business. And Sting says, I'll keep him out of your face, Hulkster, okay? And they shake hands, and that was it. So we're still doing the Luger's kind of this wild card thing. We'll see where it goes. To wrap up Raw, the main event for this one is Marty Jannetty versus Psycho Sid, because Jannetty's has some beef with Ted DiBiase's stable he's got going on. Jannetty comes out and attacks Sid from behind to start the match. But of course, 1, 2, 3 Kid and DiBiase are with Sid. But that causes Razor Ramon to come out because he's not done with the Kid. So he comes out and he knocks Sid out of the ring and chases 1, 2, 3 Kid out of the arena. So 1, 2, 3 Kid is removed from the equation. Doesn't matter. There's already a DQ. So Sid powerbombs Jannetty. And DiBiase does what he does and puts some money in Jannetty's mouth. So that ends the wrestling part. And to end Raw this week, we have one of the worst endings in Raw's history to me. And we'll see it's the worst. There might be one that tops it. But it ends with a recap of Shawn Michaels' medical diagnosis. But it has this inspiring music.
Bro, it's like, oh my gosh, slow inspirational music as Vince is talking. He's like, it's like trying to make it such a big deal.
Like, we realized that a superstar is really just like the rest of us. They're not invincible. But now we find ourselves in the uncomfortable position of hoping he'll just be all right. And believe me, he's even more anxious to get back than we are to see him back.
Yeah, they are trying to really hammer in the fact that Shawn may never come back. It's almost like an after-school PSA type of thing.
Tried so hard to garner sympathy for Shawn Michaels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he includes stuff like, wrestlers do indeed feel pain, and they're not invincible. It was so bad. It was so bad.
It's definitely worth watching.
Mm-hmm. And just remember to yourself, this is what they had to end the show. Like, this is, it was crazy.
To end the show, and your main event was Psycho Sid and Marty Jannetty
going against Lex Luger and Macho Man for the title. So that's the end of both of those shows.
Yeah, this is to me, WCW victory.
The only negative for WCW really was yet another main event ended by DQ, but to be fair, Raw's main event ended in DQ too. So, yeah. Well, I was going to say WCW has the more interesting stories going on right now. You have the whole issues with Sting, Hulk Hogan, Luger, Macho Man, Ric Flair, Arn. I mean, that whole storyline they have going on between all of those guys is more interesting to me than what they have going on the Raw side at the moment.
So the winner for this week was Raw 2.6 to 2.4.
Raw won this one again, huh? We disagree yet again.
2 weeks were Nitro, but this week was Raw.
Yeah, I'm surprised though, since they advertised the title match this week beforehand.
Yeah.
And maybe people were hooked by the Shawn Michaels thing though.
Yeah, that could have been. They had a 2.3 the week prior.
I don't mind the angle that Shawn last month when he fell down and passed out. That's fine. It's just what they're doing with that story, how they're trying to tell us the story afterwards is bad to me. It's just so forced, trying to make you feel emotional, and it's just reads as phony to me, you know? All right, so we both say WCW again. WCW is being the clear victor here for 95, it would appear. But we'll go to the next week, and it is December 11th, 1995. We'll start with Nitro, and Pepe's outfit of the week. He's dressed as a biker dog.
Very nice.
He's got a much better wardrobe than I do. But the first match for Nitro is Eddie Guerrero versus Mr. JL. And the winner is Eddie Guerrero. He wins with like a pin reversal. Eddie Guerrero's starting to get some pretty decent reactions from the crowd, so it seems like they're doing a pretty good job of building him up.
People are starting to really appreciate the cruiserweight style. Well, mid to late 96 is when like people started going real crazy for it.
After this, we get a ramp interview with Lex Luger and Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart says Lex Luger is the uncrowned WCW champion. Then Luger says he would have taken Macho Man's arm right off his body, and if it wasn't for his friend Sting convincing him to let go of the armbar and Hulk Hogan for interfering last week, he would be the WCW champion. So Luger says at Starrcade that everyone knows he owns the Macho Man, so the Macho Man is no problem. And then Luger again mentions the possibility of Sting and Luger having to face each other in the triangle match coming up at Starrcade. And he says that they're good friends and it will likely come down to the two of them and let the best man win. I think Ric Flair might have something to say about that.
Yeah.
Likely coming down to just them two. But let me go to the first match on Raw. There's an announcement that Shawn Michaels will be speaking to the fans tonight. But the first match is Owen Hart with Yokozuna and Jim Cornette, then versus Jeff Hardy. I don't remember how old Jeff Hardy is at this point, but
quite young. I don't know if this is his first appearance, but this is our first time seeing him.
Owen Hart plays around with Jeff Hardy for a while because Jeff Hardy at this point is just enhancement talent. He teases going for a sharpshooter, but doesn't even waste his time with it and just pins Jeff Hardy instead. After the match, he brings Yokozuna in the ring and he drags Jeff Hardy to the corner so that Yokozuna can go ahead and do his bonsai drop. And he does. And then Owen Hart puts the sharpshooter on. So just more rubbing salt into the wounds. Diesel is shown coming to the ring. Owen Hart runs away. And then Diesel runs the ropes really hard. This is the moment when he big boots Yokozuna out of the ring. But this looks good to me. I think he looks real intense. So he really hits Yokozuna with a lot of impact. So I thought it looked really good. And they're doing a really good job of building this heel Diesel character.
Diesel runs the ropes so well at this time.
Mm-hmm. And in case anyone is trying to think, why is Diesel going after Owen Hart? Remember, because last week he answered the Owen Hart Open Challenge. And so for the second match on Nitro's side, we have Paul Orndorff versus Disco Inferno. Paul Orndorff is feeling like himself again. He's coming out with his mirror, staring at himself with his amazing theme song. And yes, it is amazing. I don't want to hear anything about it.
It's wonderful.
And Jay, I think you have some notes on Paul Orndorff during this match.
Okay, so there's a spot where Orndorff, he runs the ropes, and to mock Disco, he dances, and it is some god-awful dancing.
I wonder what they told him to do.
He was doing his walking form. And at this point, you can really see the difference in his arm sizes because of his injury.
Yeah, in case anyone doesn't know, he had an injury to one arm, which made him not be able to use it as much.
I can't remember something, but it basically like atrophied one of his arms. And
one of his arms is nowhere near as big as the other one. He's still in pretty good shape. He's just not a good dancer. But Paul Orndorff gets the win. So after the Paul Orndorff match, we have an interview with the Four Horsemen. Chris Benoit's not with them. I believe he is wrestling in Japan at this time.
He's on tour in Japan. He's there for a while.
Yeah, he misses a few months, I believe. But Gene asks Brian Pillman, what is it like being a horseman? And Pillman says, it's a chance of a lifetime, and everyone wants to be a horseman, even Hulk Hogan. And he says, Hulk Hogan may have been able to ditch his dark side, but they don't have the same opportunity to get rid of their black hearts because they are the bad guys, while Hogan's just pretending to be a bad guy.
And then he calls out Paul Orndorff. He said he was once horseman material, but now he's not.
Yeah, you're right, because he says, Orndorff used to be horseman material, and he would cut your throat for 50 cents, but now he's part of a psychic network. Then he starts laughing at him. And then Flair starts getting on the mic, and he says his always iconic, what's causing all this? But before he can get into his promo, Paul Orndorff comes out and cuts Flair off, and he calls Pillman a punk. And he tells Pittman the only reason that Pillman is a horseman is because he chose not to be. He's essentially saying Pillman isn't horseman material, and the two get into a scuffle. And then, of course, as Arn likes to say, you jump on one of us, you jump on all of us. So then the rest of the horsemen come, put the boots to Orndorff, and then finish him off with a spike pile driver on the concrete floor. And then Paul Orndorff is stretchered out. And then I believe Pillman also says something about the Dungeon of Doom. And I forget exactly what he says, but that plays into something next week, I believe.
Make a certain master of tasks happy.
I thought there's a pretty good segment here for the Horsemen. Don't really know how Paul Orndorff fits into it. That they haven't really continued that yet.
He was just injured, and they wanted to write him off.
Because at this point, he's transitioning more to a producer role. which he was operating in that capacity when he had that Vader fight earlier in this year, real life fight. So you're probably right. He is probably trying to transition more to that full-time producer thing. All right, and so you're gonna help me with the first competitor's name against Audrey Kong, because I don't have it.
Chipurita Asaido or something like that. Chipurita Asari.
And Audrey Kong wins this match. She dominates the majority of the match, and she hits a nice looking back fist for the win.
I want to say, I think this is the one that busted her open. Quite nasty back. This is fantastic. Love to have seen the Alundra Blaze versus Audrey Kong. They were clearly setting up for that.
Alundra Blaze and Audrey Kong were two people born at the wrong time, because they would have been fantastic in this generation of women's wrestling, where women are actually given a chance.
I know Audrey Kong still wrestles, but obviously she was younger when she started. She's older.
This was almost 30 years ago. So, but she wins her match quickly, and then we go to the Shawn Michaels pre-taped Shawn Michaels interview. Todd Bettengale goes, I'm assuming, to his house to interview him, but he asked Shawn how he was doing physically. Shawn thanks everyone for their concern, but he says he's okay. He hasn't had any post-concussion symptoms lately. And then Bettengale asks, when will you be back, Shawn? And then Shawn says he wants to return right now, but the doctors won't let him. He says he still has things and goals he wants to accomplish in the WWF. But then he asks Shawn a hard-hitting question, and he pretty much asks Shawn, is he going to retire? And Shawn gives this little dejected look, and he says, is this what you came here for? Was this the whole point of all of this? The cameras and everything?
He's acting quite hurt about that question.
Yeah, he takes great exception to that question. I'm like, that didn't seem like an out-of-bounds question to me, Shawn. He says it's not easy for him because the WWF is his life, and it means everything to him. So he's not going to respond to that question, and that's the end of the interview. They're just really just looking to drag out this story for as long as they can.
Yeah.
Just this will he or won't he retire thing. So they just drag it on for yet another week. So for the third match on Nitro, we have Lex Luger versus Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Lex Luger wins this match. Luger hits a torture rack. Hacksaw Jim Duggan match. They're pretty much all the same at this point. Not much to be said here. And then after this, we get an interview with the Macho Man. Mean Gene runs down Macho Man's upcoming schedule of title defenses. He got title defense tonight, Starrcade, but Macho Man says, yeah, that sounds like Mission Impossible, but you solve problems one at a time. He ends it with saying he is like TNT, he's going to blow up in Giant's face, and there's no substitute for victory. Cool stuff from the Macho Man. Not bad promo, short.
Dig it.
And then we have on Raw's side, we have Ahmed Johnson versus Rick Stackhauser, I believe was the name. The winner is Ahmed Johnson, squash match. There is a Dean Douglas video where he says that he will end Ahmed Johnson's meteoric rise in the WWF.
Ahmed has a very awkward looking spine buster. Beats the spot because I think he knew he screwed it up, and then he just did another bad spine buster.
But after the match, King goes to interview Ahmed Johnson. Says, Ahmed, I bet you're getting nervous going into your match with Dean Douglas. And he says, by the way, Dean told me the toughest 4 years of your life was the third grade. So, and then King says, Ahmed, what do you know about Dean Douglas? Ahmed says, if Dean did his homework, he would know that he shouldn't face him. And then he tells King to sit back down because he's done with taking King's disrespect too. And then WWF has one more thing before the main event. They have an in-ring interview with Psycho Sid, 123 Kid, and Ted DiBiase. So Vince, he tells 123 Kid, the last time we saw you were running away from Razor Ramon. DiBiase takes exception to that, and he says, hey, I'm the spokesperson here, and Razor Ramon is a slime ball. He says, we are one big happy family, and we will be the next WWF Tag Team Champions. It's Sid and the Kid being the champions. Kid says DiBiase taught him some things. 1, the people don't matter. 2, wins matter. And 3, money matters the most. That sounds like something DiBiase would say.
Yeah.
Kid tells Razor he's not going to let him manipulate him no more. And he tells Jannetty that I'm better than you. He and Sid will show Razor and Jannetty that they're the better tag team as well. And then Sid gets on the mic, which is always an adventure. He says he felt sorry for Jannetty at first because he is the victim of circumstance and he chose the wrong partner. He tells Razor he doesn't feel sorry for him and he will enjoy the things he does to Razor. And then he starts acting crazy at the end, saying he lied. He will enjoy hurting Jannetty as well. And so we'll go to the main events. We'll start with Nitros. It is Ric Flair and Arn Anderson versus Hulk Hogan and Sting. There's a weird moment where Sting comes out before Hogan and the announcers say, hey, wait a minute, Sting wasn't supposed to come out first. Hogan then makes his entrance and he starts looking at Sting like, hey man, what are you doing? It's kind of weird. why they did that.
Come out first, brother.
Also, it should be noted that this is a pro Flair crowd, and there's a loud Hogan sucks chant that breaks out.
He does at this time. Hogan does indeed suck.
They really drag out the hot tag to Hulk Hogan. Flair and Arn really work over Sting for a while, but of course, when Hogan does get his hot tag, big boots Arn and Flair, and eventually hits the leg drop for the win. So Sting and Hulk Hogan win the match. After the match, Brian Pillman comes out and attacks Sting from behind, but then Flair and Arn get the jump on Hogan, and they're both being worked over by the Horsemen as Lex Luger comes out, and he gets Brian Pillman off of Sting, but he lets the Horsemen attack Hogan, because remember, he doesn't care what happens to Hogan. He's helping his friend Sting. So Sting gets up and he gets the Horseman off of Hogan, and then Savage comes out to confront Sting, and then Hogan chases Luger off. Sting, now remember last week Hogan punched Sting, so this week Sting punches Macho Man, but then as soon as he punches him, he seems to immediately regret his actions, and Macho Man responds to the punch by slapping him in the face.
Slap.
And Hogan gets in between them to break it up. Like last week, you got to get Mean Gene out there, get to the bottom of this madness. So Hogan asks Sting, what's going on between him and Savage, because they need to fight Flair and Arn and the Horsemen, not each other.
Chants around this time are really loud.
Savage tells Sting he hates Lex Luger, but he says, Sting, you got a good right hook. So what? But what's the deal? Sting says it was the heat of the moment, Mach. I regret it. Then Hogan says they need to be a team to beat Flair. And Savage says he knows he overreacts. He says it's one of his faults. And he tells everyone in the ring to take a chill pill. Then Hogan reminds Macho about his title match next week against the Giants. And he says, pretty much, hey, focus on that. We don't need to be breaking up. Let's focus on that. Savage says we'll stick together, and like Jacob mentioned earlier, the crowd is not into this trio. Not the right town for this.
No.
They don't care about any of this going on right now.
And I agree with them. The constant slurping is just
And since it's a second week in a row where we essentially end the show the same way, they just need to go ahead and move the story. The pace here is killing me. But for Raw, we have the not so much anticipated by me main event of Bob Backlund versus Bret Hart. Bulldog's wife and Bret Hart's sister Diana is in the crowd, and during the match, King goes to interview her and asks what her thoughts are about them facing each other as a family. Diana says the Bulldog has beaten Hart before, and she supports her husband, and she credits Cornette for getting her husband a title shot. But during the match, Bret Hart goes for the sharpshooter, and as he does, Bulldog comes out. This allows Bob Backlund to put the crossface chicken wing on Bret Hart, and the ref does call disqualification, so the winner is Bret Hart by disqualification. But Bob Backlund has this chicken wing on for a long time. And it's the second show in a row now Bret Hart's been choked out by Bob Backlund. So I have to question why WWF is making Bret Hart look weak. He just won the title.
I don't understand why they had to do a DQ finish. Why couldn't Bret Hart have submitted or pinned Backlund?
Yeah.
You still could have done this angle where he chokes him out after.
Yeah, this made no sense. It was in an effort to get Bulldog heat. Bret Hart at this point should easily be able to dispose of Bob Backlund, and they make Bret Hart look weak here, in my opinion. So ever since he won the title for Diesel, which we liked, I haven't liked this Bob Backlund stuff they've been doing with him at all.
It's not 1994 anymore.
Yeah, and their effort to put more heat on Bulldog, I feel like they actually put more heat on Bob Backlund, which shouldn't be the case. Should showcase Bulldog.
It's like, Backlund has Bret's number.
Whatever, but that is the end of both those shows for this week. Not the best episode for either show, in my opinion. I think WCW is going to win this ever so slightly, and that's solely just because they got bigger names throughout the show. Yeah, they just had the bigger names throughout the show, and a bit more interesting than seeing Bob Backlund and Bret Hart, especially the ending kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. What did the people say, though?
So the people said that WCW won 2.6 to 2.5. Razor thin.
Oh, and I should have mentioned, Jacob, this was the go-home show for Raw. Bulldog should have been the guy to get that heat at the end. So next, we have the In Your House pay-per-view. It's on December 17th of 1995. We open up with a promo just going over the matches for the night, but it does end with the ever so cheesy Seasons Beatings line. And of course, because it's December.
They were real proud of that one.
Yeah. But the first match is Psycho Sid and 1-2-3 Kid versus Razor Ramon and Marty Jannetty. And during this match, we see Goldust sitting at ringside watching the match. And he's with his servant. Team DiBiase doesn't want Razor Ramon in the match, so they work over Jannetty for a while. And while Jannetty's getting worked over, Todd Pettengill takes it upon himself to interview Goldust to see why he's there. And Goldust, he says Razor is 100% man, and he makes him sweat in a hormonal sea of life. And he asks Todd to give Razor the letter that he wrote.
No.
So Pettengill takes the letter. Eventually, Razor does get the hot tag, and he hits 123 Kid with the lovely named Sack of Shit. And eventually, Razor and Jannetty win after Razor hits a top rope bulldog on Sid for the win. This was a clean finish.
Yep.
And then Razor goes to hit 123 with the Razor's Edge, but Sid pulls him out of the ring. So, dang it, 123 Kid did not get his comeuppance.
Guess what? To tune in again.
I do think they are doing a good job of kind of what they're doing with, or did with the Dominic Mysterio, Rey Mysterio storyline, is they prolong the beatdown for a while to make you really want to see it. But after this match, we have a weird moment where the announcer... The announcer goes ahead and announces the returning Buddy Landel.
And then Vince is mad.
He's mad as hell. He says the announcer has no clue what is going on. And you just know Vince McMahon laid into his ass.
Because Buddy Landel was supposed to be a surprise. And then so them announcing it took everything out of it. So that whole audience must have been like, why did they say Buddy Landel?
Yeah.
And then they're going into this next segment. You know, it's odd.
Yeah, the announcer was a segment too early. What was supposed to happen was King was supposed to come to the ring with a present for the returning Jeff Jarrett. So King goes ahead and puts over Jeff Jarrett's music and says his album went like platinum gold or whatever. And Jeff Jarrett says that he's getting ready for another tour called Greater Than Great.
Yeah, Greater Than Great. His first one was the Ain't That Great?
King gives Jeff Jarrett the gift, and it is a framed record of his hit album, Ain't That Great. Jeff Jarrett loves the gift, and he says he will be the #1 participant in the 1996 Royal Rumble. So that was that whole segment there, just to put over Jeff Jarrett and his music abilities.
Somebody's not going to be happy that Jarrett announced himself as an entrant in the Rumble.
Yeah, you can't just go announcing yourself as the #1 contender.
Announcing yourself as the #1 entrant.
And then Jeff Jarrett goes to do commentary for the next match, which is Dean Douglas versus Ahmed Johnson. But hold on. Dean Douglas comes out and he gets on the mic. He says he was supposed to wrestle Ahmed, but the doctor sidelined him as his back is only 65%.
Only 65%? You can't compete.
Only 65%. I mean, Jake, we've all know what it feels like to be 65% exactly. He says that even at 65%, he could teach Ahmed a lesson, but he has a new student he has been teaching and brings in Buddy Landel, who was supposed to be a surprise, but it's not, and it wouldn't have been a surprise anyway.
Yeah,
or not a good one, at least.
Like bringing out Buddy Landel in '95, you know, it's just odd.
Let's just be frank, Jacob. Buddy Landel looks like shit.
Yeah, but he really wasn't that old. This isn't the Buddy Landel of the '80s.
Yeah, he's getting a paycheck, I guess. Quick match. Ahmed Johnson wins the Pro River Plunge. No contest. And then after the match, Ahmed Johnson gets a hold of Dean Douglas's paddle and then paddles Dean after the match. And then we have King goes to interview Ahmed Johnson. He says, "You must think these fans are impressed by you during this match." And then he asks Jeff Jarrett, "Were you impressed?" And Jeff Jarrett says,
"Absolutely not."
The way he says that, I'm like, I mean, you couldn't sound, he is Jeff Jarrett, but you couldn't sound more Jeff Jarrett if you tried.
That was, very Jeff Jarrett-y.
King puts over Jeff Jarrett, saying he's a football standout and had a 4.0 GPA. Ahmed calls Jeff Jarrett a fake cowboy and an achy breaky heart wannabe. Ouch. Say that man just had a gold album. You not see that? Ain't that great? Ahmed then goes to address King after he put down the verbal beatdown on Jeff Jarrett. And as he turns around, Jeff Jarrett hits Ahmed with the record frame and his head goes straight through it. Then King and Jarrett go put the boots to him. Then Jeff Jarrett says, "You know what? I saw that paddle. I want to get that paddle." Jeff Jarrett does land a few paddle shots on him, which pisses Ahmed Johnson off, and he chases Jarrett away.
It's just the WWF having, but Buddy Landel just doesn't seem a proper fit for this WWF.
No, I believe he only lasts a couple of weeks because I believe he does get injured on a Saturday show. After that whole segment, we have interview. Todd Pettengill did give Razor Ramon the letter. Razor opens it and looks disgusted and throws the letter down, but we don't know yet what the letter said.
He was disgusted, Mike.
So next we have the Hogpin match. We have Hunter Hearst Helmsley versus Henry Godwin with Hillbilly Jim as the ref.
And so we talked last time about the Hogpin match. We said that the internet told us that could have been for a punishment. But we looked into it, and it was Triple H confirmed it was not, and he actually liked it. He just wished that it wasn't as messy. And he was told not to put his fingers near the pigs because the pigs could eat his fingers. So, the more you know.
I love that he said that it was mess. He didn't like it being messy.
Yeah.
Like, it's a hog pen match. I don't know what you were expecting.
He said that the pigs were left in that pen for a long time, so I guess it just got really messy. The pigs really made it even messier.
Ew. But Triple H makes a lot of funny looking faces of him just being repulsed by the hog pen. And Godwin does go to throw slop on Triple H, but Triple H moves out the way, and poor Tony Chimmel gets slopped.
They absolutely drill. Absolutely drilled with the slop.
The hog pen is outside the ring, of course. It's kind of in the entrance ramp area off to the side. So eventually they make their way over there. Triple H gets Irish whipped or something into the front of the gate, and he gets a mean looking gash on his back near the end. But the finish sees Godwin tries to clothesline Triple H into the hog pen. The rules of the match, if you get into the hog pen, you lose. But Triple H reverses it and sends Godwin into the hog pen, and so Triple H wins. There's a funny sight later on of Triple H in the hog pen. He gets in there as well.
So Godwin eventually gets Triple H into the hog pen, and he's absolutely filthy, and he like rubs slop and stuff on him. And as Triple H is like mad that he's dirty, so a fan drills Triple H in the head with a soda.
Absolutely nail him with the drink.
So Triple H wins, but he does get his comeuppance and getting absolutely filthy, which of course we know he does not like.
He does not. But then next match will feature one of Triple H's real life friends, and Diesel. He will be taking on Owen Hart. Remember, this is the Owen Hart Open Challenge. Diesel answered it. Diesel dominates the match. He hits Owen Hart with a jackknife. The ref counts to 2, but Diesel takes his foot off of Owen Hart, and he goes for a second jackknife, but the ref doesn't want him to do a second jackknife, so he shoves the ref, so it causes a disqualification. So Owen Hart does win by disqualification, but still Owen Hart doesn't really get much offense in.
Diesel hits the jackknife anyway. Then he does a motion that he's going for the title.
I wonder if anybody else is going to do that tonight. So after that match, we got Ted DiBiase in the ring for this terrible Christmas segment that we have. We see Savio Vega out in the crowd giving out stuff for Christmas to the fans. He tells Vega to come into the ring and bring that Santa Claus with him. And DiBiase essentially says Christmas isn't real. And he asks Savio Vega, do you believe in Santa? Savio, being the good babyface he is, says, yes, he does. And then DiBiase says, well, you believe in Santa? Believe this. And then the Santa attacks Savio from behind. And then, of course, DiBiase gets to say even Santa Claus has a price for the $1 Million Man. And Savio then, him and the Santa Claus get fighting, and he does get Santa Claus's beard and hat off, and it's some guy.
Yeah,
which you told me
you will find out was John Reckner, and more familiar as Balls Mahoney.
I would have never guessed that was Balls Mahoney. Never.
But it is not Santa Claus, it's Xanta Claus.
A pointless segment that was pandering just to the holidays. Really, really bad stuff there. So let's get into the still not great stuff here, but King Mabel versus The Undertaker in a casket match.
This match was very short.
Especially it being a casket match. But what happens is Undertaker gets a choke slam on Mabel, and he gets into the casket, tries to shut it. Sir Mo tries to stop the Undertaker from doing it. So the Undertaker says, you know what? If you're trying to stop me, you're going to be getting there too. He gets Sir Mo in a casket, and he shuts the door. Or before he shuts the door, he does take the gold chain because it has the power as the ribbons of the urn in it. And so he takes that, then closes the casket, and thank goodness that feud is over.
That was a definitive end to the feud. Undertaker beats him in like 6 minutes. Pretty decisive victory, and we can all move on to better things. I believe Mabel is fired not too long after that.
I want to say, yeah, I believe Mabel is pretty much wrapping up his first run here in the WWF. As Diesel did earlier, Undertaker title motion to the camera that he wants the belt. So,
Man, we got multiple people who want championship gold.
And 2 worthy contenders, I'd say.
Undertaker being more worthy, since he is the GOAT.
Not the GOAT, but next will be our main event. But before the main event, we have an interview with the Bulldog and Diana. Cornette tells Bret Hart that he's always been jealous of the Bulldog. He says Bulldog took Hart's sister from him. Diana says she has faith in her husband. And then, of course, the Bulldog says, I beat you in 1992, and I would do it again tonight and win the title. Bret Hart gets his own pre-match interview, and Pettingale asks Bret Hart if tonight will be his night. Bret Hart says he is the best, and tonight he will prove it, and revenge will be his. So then we come into the main event, which is the British Bulldog with Jim Cornette versus Bret Hart for the WWF Championship.
Long, in my opinion.
It was long. When Bret Hart does get busted open pretty good here. Oh, it also should be noted that Bulldog is coming out in the same attire that he came out in when he beat Bret Hart in 1992.
I thought that was a nice touch.
Yes, it was. During this match, though, an ECW chant broke out, so I think a lot of fans also didn't really care too much about this match.
No, they did not.
Which I don't think it was a bad match at all. It just wasn't anything that was exciting. But Vince, during this match, also makes an announcement that the winner of this match will be facing The Undertaker for the title at the Royal Rumble. But Bret Hart does get the win. Bulldog tries to charge Bret Hart in a corner, but Bret Hart big boots him and then gets him into a pinning maneuver for the win. Disappointing ending to the match, I'd say.
Yeah. But Bret Hart a lot of times always wanted to find different ways to end matches.
It just felt underwhelming. A big boot, get you up pinned, that's it. For this guy who... I just felt like the way they built this match up by saying Bulldog has its number, for him to win in such a decisive manner like that was kind of, especially with that he didn't use his finishers. It wasn't like a pin reversal. He just got him up, did a pin, and that was it. I felt like Bulldog, the way they were building him up, he should have fought harder to try to win the match. Yeah,
it should have been. Yeah, I agree.
But not a bad match, but long. So that's over. Diana, they do show Diana after the match, and she looks so disappointed in her husband. She was like, ugh. But then we see their what they call an in-your-house extra they show. So what happens after the pay-per-view, I guess. Todd Pettengill goes to interview Paul Bearer and The Undertaker. Paul Bearer says the fans want The Undertaker to have a championship match. And then before he can say anything further, Diesel comes in and says he should be the title contender. Diesel says, people have been dodging me. But The Undertaker responds saying, I'm not dodging anybody. And the two men have a stare down at the end. So we got two title contenders.
Man, these two are beefing one another.
They both want the same thing. I wonder how we're going to resolve the issue here. So that is In Your House. Overall, I do think this was a better pay-per-view than Survivor Series.
Yes. There's at least stuff you cared about. You got progression of Razor and 1, 2, 3 Kid. You still got, now you have established Jeff Jarrett and Ahmed Johnson feud. You did the Godwin and Triple H feud, and you obviously you set up your WrestleMania feud with Diesel and Undertaker.
I would say this is probably about your average pay-per-view. If I had to rate it out of 5, like a 2.5, something like that.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be among the best in your houses.
No, but again, much better than the Survivor Series we just had.